thanks for joining this webinar. So I just want to kind of open it up this morning to kind of run through what we want to do. Suppose we've had our mobile app as probably for about 4 years that we have the app developed. Primarily it was designed to work with the WinScale box, the previous controller. And starting when we looked at how we were going to design it and work it, it was very much focused on actually the beef market, on how we could manage pens within the beef and move animals within the pens to feed them directly, and try to give a bit more of a scope for the beef guys. But as time went on, it was what they call it, quickly identified that this was going to be very much also for the dairy guys, where they can actually manage their feed, where they can actually look and see how they can change the quantity of ingredients, look at how they can change the dry matter percentage and costs and so on through their mobile phone. And we realized that a lot of stuff has to be done through the mobile. Back even 3 or 4 years ago, we said, listen, this is going to be very important to do this way. And one of the things that we were looking at when we started off was, with the connectivity on farm and the mobile signal, did we need an offline version so that the farmer could use it when he has no signal? So we said that was very important at the time to develop it that way. So that's what we did. So we've got an offline and on which connects online when you're in signal. And we developed it through a company called Feed Henry, which was following on was bought by Linux Red Hat for something like 70 million. And it was a good piece of kit because it allowed us to publish to multiple platforms, to Android, to iOS, to Windows Mobile, through one piece of code, which was really, really good back then. But as time went on, they changed their platform and they looked to us to upgrade, and we were unwilling to do it. So we said we had to pull it back in-house ourselves. And then we actually had Richard Nolan join us. Richard's with us about close enough 9 months, I'd say. And Richard's first task when he came in, I says, Richard, we have 2 months to move this to our own Azure platform, so no pressure. And then credit to him, he actually delivered it for companies that we were priced to get it done externally. They were given a 6-month time frame to do it, and we're getting quotes anything from 60,000 to 100,000 to do it. So Richard, fair play to him to pull that off. But what he also did, he made things a bit simpler on how we do things. So we got 2 versions. So when you log in on the WinScale customer, you will see the old green interface and the 4 buttons on how to do it, as Richard is going to give you a demo in a while. And when you log into the new one, you'll get 5 buttons and a grayscale, kind of a gray background to it. So the customer, when he logs in, doesn't know any difference. He's pointed in the different directions of what to do. I suppose today what we want to do is we want to go through and show you how to actually use the app. So when you go on farm and that you get your farm customers to use this app, that you're aware of how to do it and how to show them and to be able to support them in the market. So again, we'll probably dig into some more questions after the demo, but now I'd probably like to pass you over to Richard to bring you through a walkthrough of the app. Can you connect in there, Richard? Hello, Richard. We were talking to him a few minutes ago. Are you muted there, Richard? Because we can't hear you. Sorry, just 1 second, guys. I'm gonna get Richard.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you there now.
I have to put you on the laptop's microphone, so hopefully.
Okay, can you share your screen there and just probably turn up your volume a small bit?
Okay, as Conan was saying, the way the app was developed originally and how it was, the reasons it was created, were very different from what they are now. So there's been a real evolution of how the app works and what it does over that time period. Also, as I said, the goal early when I started was to move the app off the Feed Henry platform. Feed Henry did an awful lot of work for us, such as hosting all the back end, building the application when we make changes, and all that's been brought in-house now. So we've got the back end on Azure. It's a series of 9 separate applications that all have to work together and connect to DG and connect to our own servers here. So there's an awful lot of things, moving parts. On the front end side, we had this new challenge of integrating the newest version of the DTM or the DG API. What that means is that how the DTM works, how data works, it changed fundamentally. The big change was the introduction of what's sometimes known as a batch, sometimes known as a load. And what this meant was that recipes weren't transferred to the box anymore, or on the newer box at least. It was this batch item. And a batch is a sort of a relationship between a recipe and a number of pens. So previous to this, a recipe would have been made up for a certain number of animals of a certain size, and that recipe is just sent to the box and you feed whatever group or pen of animals you want with that. The change now, and what the batch allows, is that you make a recipe for one single animal of a certain weight, for example, but that one recipe is then attached to any number of pens, and it gets multiplied by the number of animals in those pens. And from a data design point of view, it seems like a better solution, but the implications for us is that we're now trying to juggle 2 completely different approaches to the same problem, which is how to take a recipe and multiply it out to a number of animals and transfer it to a box and record that data, that feed out back in a meaningful way. Now, to that end, the app that was there, we really had two avenues that we had to follow down kind of at the same time. One was obviously the removal, coming off of Feed Henry, removing the whole back end from that. And as that was going on, we were also kind of simultaneously trying to develop this new batch feature. And like I said, it's a fundamental change in how the data works. Okay, so what we decided was, because we've got customers using from both sides, both kind of data avenues, using the same app, rather than having 2 apps, we decided we'd have the one singular app. I'll just try and share the screen here. Hopefully you can see that now. What I have here now is an emulator, which essentially is the mobile phone running on the laptop. I'm
yeah,
going
we
to
can see that, Richard, just let you know.
just to show you, I have a demo account and just log in. And show you. As Conan mentioned previous, what you would have been used to with the other app, or with the app as it has been up to now, is that as customers on the older boxes sign in, they would have got the traditional 4 squares in front. We purposely changed the layout just a little bit. Obviously, we needed extra space on the page because we have a new feature, but also we purposely changed the feel of the page, the color, things like that. We stopped the little rotating image at the top. We wanted to completely identify that this was different from the other. Similarly to the other one, we've got the 4 pens, recipes, performance, and ingredients. These 4 main features were always on the other one, and you're familiar with all those. The big one is this new loads, which we purposely made large and very prominent on the screen. Reason being, we need to direct people towards that. The way I'm going to start on pens. Traditionally, what you do is you'd set up a group of pens, and these would have a number of animals and all the general statistics for them. You would then also, I've got this menu item up here as well to jump between the things. You would also then have a recipe. So, for example, this silage recipe, and you'd have ingredients in that recipe, and et cetera, et cetera. If I go back to the main screen, then what I'll be showing you here is just the link and how batches or loads work. The word is interchangeable. I've heard loads used on a couple of different occasions. It seems to be the most commonly used one, but there can be confusion with it. So please excuse me if I can interchange the word. I hope it doesn't lead to any confusion. But on this load/batches page, it's simple enough. It's a list of what you will eventually see on the controller on the machine. And what it does is it literally ties a recipe, in this case the silage recipe, to a pen or number of pens. And that's pretty much it. We can add more pens to the batch. We can change the recipe. We can do some more features like that. Now, if I, the biggest thing with these batches is to be able to transfer them to the machine. And the way that that's done, you can see here in the list of batches that some are transferred and some are not. If I was to select this one, we can see, go to transfer here at the bottom, and you can see that this machine has that recipe or that batch transferred to it. I can turn that off, and now as I hit done, that now is done. It's taken off the box. And that's as soon as you sync the box, now that batch will be gone. So now I can just come back in and turn it back on and hit done, and it's back. And again, it synchronizes with the controller on the machine, and will be there once you do a sync. Now, there's a lot to take in on this part alone, but I do need to as well go through some other aspects of it. The way the ingredients, again, some of you will be familiar with all these. This is literally just the data that you're seeing on the DTM, just repackaged. You can change whatever data you need. You obviously would know this a lot better than I, what all these things mean. If I go through, let me see, the performance, I'll come back to that in a second. The big thing is that if we change data in the ingredients, like in this recipe here, the silage recipe, if I was to change any of the data here, that it would be updated. So if I was to say 5 kilos and hit done, that ration and subsequently the batch will be updated for the farmer on the machine itself. We can see here what batches that recipe is associated with also, and we can add more loads to it. Now the performance thing, a lot of this would have been on the old app. It's I want to try and stress, I suppose, that the loads feature is the only real difference. How we get that data to the machine and what data exactly we are sending to the machine, and that is the loads. What you're familiar with already would be everything else is as was. I'd like to show you the performance, but because this is a demo account, I'm going to try it. But again, this is on a development machine and things like that. So I'll run through it very quickly though. With this, you select a pen that you wish to, usually a milker's thing, because this is always just to do with milk, it's the RPM data. Fill in any numbers you wish, all the data there. You would be familiar with doing this on the DTM itself, or the community the page on the DTM that comes back to our servers. You can put in extra parlor feed that the animals have been fed. Again, you go back and choose the pens. And when you save that, it's going to question me now about a lot of data. You probably don't want to watch me filling in all this. This obviously will have to be validated, so it won't matter very much. And okay, so what you'll see here now, you see obviously there's no result because it hasn't been validated yet. That's because it's the demo account, but it does save all those RPMs here awaiting validation. Once they're validated, they do get moved into the results category. And all that data, as it gets validated, then would end up eventually on our portal. As soon as it's validated, you will see that data on our portal. Now, make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't know if Conan wants to come in and make any suggestions if I'm forgetting anything.
Hello, Richard, can you hear me? Yeah. I don't think Richard can hear me. I don't think he can hear his microphone, so 1 second.
No. Not hearing anything. Okay, well, I'm waiting to see now if Conan can come back in there and make any suggestions if he feels I'm missing out on anything. I think I could show you how to add a ration or create a recipe. If I was to just go through this, I add a name. Again, like I said, this is the average weight of the animal that this recipe will be for. Obviously, you have to bear in mind that this, on the newer customer version, is for one individual animal. So if it was a 500 kg animal, and then I can add whatever ingredients I want to that. We've got a lot of duplication here, but that's all just okay. And we get those added in. We put in our quantities for each animal. Oh, apologies, I'm after quit now that on me. Just add another. Okay, and I'll just save that. And there we have a recipe. Once the recipe is there, then I can make some changes to it, and I can go to the loads, and I can create a new load and add that. You can see it's very hard to scroll on this. There's the batch. I can add in some extra feed, and I can add some pens. So I'm just going to add this to the milker's pen. Now this is something that I'm not sure how familiar you are with. It's the adjustment percentage. The adjustment percentage is an alternative to the rations extra. So on the older machine, it used to be, I think, again, I'm not here long enough to know exactly how it was, but from what I understand, it was common enough practice that if I have a recipe made for 10 animals, that if I decided I wanted to feed them 12 rations, I could add those extra 2 rations in on the controller, or indeed on the recipe itself, that even though it's made for 10 animals, I can add in extra rations. This adjustment percentage is somewhat similar, but the idea being that if you're making a recipe for one single animal, that you can give them an extra percentage of that same recipe on top. So 100% would mean that that animal in that pen, whatever pen is in the batch, would get 100% of their allotted amount. But if I was, for example, I don't know, moving milkers into dry cows, that I might decide I want to give 75%. I want to cut back the ration for each animal. So the adjustment percentage is how that's done. And what that would mean is that the entire load would be reduced by that amount for whatever, multiplied up by the number of animals. It literally is just a percentage. So if I was wanting to up the percentage, up it like that and save, and that's it. Okay, I got the 120%. And if I want to transfer that recipe, then I go to transfer, tick the box, and it gets transferred to the controller. And as I said, when you sync the controller on the machine, you will get that there directly, straight away. Don't mind these kind of little visual tweaks. This is, like I said, a development thing. Other than that, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot of moving things. My primary concern was always going to be the batches and getting it off to feed Henry, which was a big thing, but that's outside of what you're going to see. The batches thing, you should be probably getting familiar with it on the DTM. And we tried to, I suppose, replicate that as much as possible. What I want to get from this is to see whether you feel that, it's clear enough, whether it's straightforward enough, whether there's room for improvement or where that improvement can be. So if Conan would like to...
Yeah, thanks for that, Richard.
Back in on that.
Do you want to open up for questions? I'll let over to our host, Martin, our MC for the evening. So if anybody any questions, raise your hand there.
No, Conan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Chris, you're on there.
Good. Yeah, I'm actually driving, so I've not actually seen anything on the screen, but I've been listening to the presentation there. Just one thing on the percentage change, probably related to DTM and also the controller as well. I'm finding we probably need a decimal point in there. We're limited to full numbers on a percentage at the moment, and it's probably not enough. Doesn't give us enough flexibility.
Okay, so you want increments of 1.1, 1.2, 1.3?
Yeah.
Okay. Richard, how possible is that?
Conan, we had a question here from Chris. I don't think Chris is on about the percentage increase or decrease. He's just wondering, can we have more increments of like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 rather than just 1, 2, 3? Rather than whole numbers, can we get decimal points in there?
We haven't looked at it.
Okay.
It is probably something we can do. How much is that more for a nutritionist to actually do it, or was a farmer do the 1.1%? Like how?
It would be for a farmer. I mean, I've tried using percentage before because personally I feel it's probably a better way to work the whole thing is on percentage rather than matching numbers. But when you get to kind of bigger load sizes, just using the percentage, going from 1 to 2% or whatever, changes the overall amount too much. The farmer wants something midway. We really need a point of a percent.
Okay, that's something that we can do. That's something we can look at if it's because all it is just putting in a 0.1. The only thing that we'll have to look at then you round up to the round. We'll have to do rounding, round up and down to the ingredient, because if you go 1.2%, you'll have ones that'll have 39.3 kilos. So we'll have to just put down 39. So we're gonna have to just do rounding on that as well for loading.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Anything else, Chris? Amy Rousseau.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really. It's not really necessarily an app question, but the problem that I'm finding with most of my beef farmers is they do not formulate according to per head. They formulate according to a ton mix or a 2-ton mix. I don't know. Would we ever look at doing something where we have the option of not adding ingredients per head, but rather per mix. So the full quantity of, say, if they're adding 800 kilograms of straw, that we can put in 800 instead of per head. I don't know if we're going to look at that, if that is an option in the future.
Okay, yeah, it's one that we haven't looked at because we were always animal numbers and ration percentages. Has anybody else come across that in their region, or is it specific to South Africa? I doubt it is, but has anybody had any of those requests to formulate to the feed instead of the actual?
We have seen issues where farmers are mistakenly putting in tonnage for prices on ingredients. So they're not looking at a per kilo kind of thing. They look at a bigger picture. Yeah,
I think this is a small bit different. I think Richard is what, instead of having 100 head, it's going to be feeding 800 kilos and ignoring the actual animal numbers.
Oh, right.
So it's a different.
It's different. Yeah,
different approach.
Yeah, that's just what I'm seeing with all my beef farmers. That's how they formulate. So they don't go, because they're saying that the weight of the animal's changing every day. For them to formulate per head is impossible. So they're formulating per mix rather than per animal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would have had a few do it that way. The other way I would think would be more common is on a percentage basis. So, or kilos per ton of each ingredient.
Yes, that I've seen as well. So they add, say, 8% of one ingredient and 50% of another. Yeah, so that's another way. But but the whole percentage and the whole kilograms are based on the whole mix, and they actually don't look at weight per animal at all. So that's
okay. It's something we can look into, Amy. How many beef farmers do you currently have in the system, or how many using it? Just to kind of give us an idea.
Well, unfortunately, I just lost one because of this exact problem. But but unfortunately, because most of my guys are dairy, because the guys haven't really looked at going into the beef as much, to be completely honest. But I have there's about only 4 of them. But I think if this could be an option, it could change. But as I said, we've been focusing mainly on the dairy and not so much beef at all.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay.
Can I ask quickly there on that point then, if there's a known number of animals?
Yes. So there is a known number of animals per pen, but as I said, they don't formulate according to numbers, rather per.
Yeah, no, I'm imagining a scenario where it's done in reverse. That if you know a number of animals and you put in a recipe with a quantity for the entire amount, that dividing it by the number of animals, we formulate a recipe almost backwards.
Yeah, so basically what they do is they feed out, say on a Tuesday, then they walk around Wednesday morning, they see that they finished all the food, and then they just say, okay, add so many kilograms extra or decrease. So they're actually going according to what they're seeing more than anything else. So basically.
Okay, I think that way is because we just have to make sure, we'll have to just put in conjunction, we'll have to talk to Dynamic as well, that it can be done on DTM side as well, because the 2 have to link up.
Okay, yeah, that would be great if that is possible.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Who's up?
Amy, have you got anything else?
No, that's all from my side. Thank you.
No, the only other thing for me would be, I did, like I said, I couldn't actually see the screen, but in the past, I've always found it a bit difficult and a bit uncertain to know if the ration is actually sent or not sent to the box. So this works in a slightly different way.
Yeah, that's good, Chris. We have made changes where on the demo that you can see there on the latest version, it is easier to be if the recipe has been transferred to the controller. It's clearly visible. But speaking with Richard, we feel that we can make it simpler. That instead of doing a swipe and going to another screen to check a box, I think we need to make it easier with just a simple button transfer, and hit the button and it's done. So we have discussed that, and it's probably our next development that we're looking at on the app, is to make that user experience a bit more simpler, with the kind of same functionality we have there, but how we can make it easier. We probably, since the app was designed, we designed it for functionality rather than user experience, and that was my kind of take on it. I think we need to look at it, turn it on its head, look at user experience, and then worry about functionality.
Yeah, okay.
I would say that on the confirmation that is received by the box, you have to sync on the box before there's any confirmation. So if the box is outside of a region, it's very hard for the app or any DTM or anything to know for certain that it's on the controller. The sync has to be done on the controller. That's outside of our control. We don't send it to the box. It's more so that the box gets it, and that's what the process is very important.
I think that will improve as well, Richard. That we can see.
Yeah, it's just to point that even though I say something is transferred, it's not transferred until you do the sync. That's just important to know that the sync has to be done on the control side as things stand.
But with the next release,
of course, things will change.
Of the firmware for the controller, it will actually have syncing in the background.
Yeah.
So we can turn on automatic syncing. So every time a load is completed, it'll actually do a sync in the background without the farmer seeing it on the screen. So we'll be doing multiple syncs per day than a sync in the morning.
Yeah.
We'll have a much better connection ratio and transfers to be done on a more regular basis.
Yeah.
Okay, good. The only other thing on kind of the customer usability, when you're adding in an RPM, I'm always kind of churning the customers on the DTM to kind of copy the previous result and edit. You know, it makes it much simpler and much quicker for them to do it. And then when they go to the app, they've not had the ability to do that. They've got to start again from scratch. Is it possible to copy and edit a previous RPM on the app?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, it's one of those things exactly that we want to hear, that how they use it or why they don't use it. If they find that the putting in production data is tiresome and repetitive, and even me filling it out there for you guys, I was conscious that you were sitting watching me typing in a bunch of numbers. So in theory, there's no reason why something like that couldn't be implemented. It should be straightforward enough. They select a kind of a template from the previous and alter it before submitting.
Yep.
Okay, good.